Hello, I'm Matthew Gavidia. Today in the MGH Life Sciences Medical World News, American Journal of Managed Care is pleased to welcome David Weisenfeld, a legal editor and host of a new podcast by XpertHR on post-reopening challenges for employers. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure, Matthew. So as you noted, I host a podcast series at XpertHR, and we've been doing quite a number of programs on COVID-19 related issues affecting the workplace, not only affecting employers, but affecting employees as well. So certainly a lot of things to discuss there, and glad to be here with you.
Recently, XpertHR conducted a poll examining COVID-19 related challenges for employers. In their findings, some of the most significant issues listed were back to school and other leave-related issues. How are some employers managing these concerns from employees who may now be tasked with a more caregiving role?
Well, certainly offering telework as an option is one key way that they can respond, because what we're seeing, or what we're about to see as the kids go back to school in late August, early September, is something that's going to be quite different even from what we experienced in March through June, because now some parents are back to work physically, but the kids in many cases are still going to be home either part or all of the time. So an employer really has to navigate that and kind of be flexible in dealing with their employees in how they handle that. And having childcare benefits, flexible work options, really, those are key elements.
And additionally, found in the report were rises in adverse mental health outcomes such as anxiety and workplace safety issues. And as we alluded to before, the workplace is going to be different to promote safety. Can you discuss how employers are easing employees back into the workplace?
Sure. So as we noted in that broadcast you mentioned, the mental health numbers really were off the charts in May and June compared to what we were seeing pre-COVID-19 in terms of the number of employees who were experiencing not only anxiety, but depression. So employers really need to make sure that employees know where to go, that they not just have an employee assistance plan, but that it's actually has some concrete steps for employees to know who they can turn to, who they can call if they need help. Managers should be communicating regularly with employees because it's very easy during this time to be distant and removed and assume everything's fine when it might not be. So those are really steps that employers need to take and need to be on top of. And again, flexible work certainly is an option in keeping employees hopefully reducing their anxiety.
A rising political issue is the use of masks, which may be further intensified when in the workplace. How are employers dealing with these concerns, especially those who refuse to wear masks?
That's a tricky issue because there have been some stories of customers assaulting employees who confront them about not wearing masks. And employers really need to make sure that their policies have teeth here. It's all well and good to have a policy, but just like we saw with sexual harassment in the pre-Harvey Weinstein years, if you don't actually have enforcement, it doesn't really mean anything. And the same is true with the masks. So if you're requiring low-wage employees to just be the front line of defense and enforce those policies, that's really putting them in harm's way and could open the employer up to trouble later on, not to mention the safety of their employees. So it's important to have managers out front enforcing the policies. It's also important to be consistent and make sure that it's applying across the board.
And I know we alluded to some before, but what are some of the steps employers can undertake to address notable back to work challenges precipitated by the pandemic?
Well, certainly, as we noted, telework would be one way to address challenges, but there are others. So obviously, certain employers, that's not going to be effective as a practical matter. If you're on the assembly line, it's not as easy to work remotely as with what you and I do. But there are steps, and even for an assembly line or construction that can be taken. For instance, An employer could have staggered shifts. So maybe only 50% of the workers are at the work site at a given time, which can help in terms of not only the social distancing, but in terms of keeping the workers safe. And having A and B days could be one option, just like we've heard with the schools. Employers can do that as well, and some are already doing that. And also, I would just add kind of rethinking the physical layout of the work site. And by that, I mean, there's been such an emphasis in recent years on open floor plans and having us be close to our neighbors. And that seemed great in terms of collaboration before, but that just doesn't work now with the pandemic going on. So thinking about things like a one-way corridor so that your employees aren't bumping into each other, going to the restroom or to break rooms, limiting the number of people in the break room at a given time, and having plexiglass, which we've already seen in grocery stores and other retail establishments. But even in an office building, either having that or higher cubicles are all things that employers can and should be considering.
And lastly, do you have any other concluding thoughts on the report or anything related to back to work challenges?
I would just say, Matthew, certainly we're seeing this trend already, but it's probably worth noting that we've seen some employers like Google say they're not going to go back to work until July 1st of 2021, and others have closed at least through the end of 2020 physically. So if you have a company where the work can be done remotely, it's certainly worth considering whether that can continue to be the case, at least for the near future, especially as we're seeing a spike in COVID cases in many different regions of the country. So that's certainly something to consider. And of course, the flexible work options would be another thing as well.
To learn more, visit our website, ajmc.com. I'm Matthew Gavidia. Thanks for joining us.